Hi again. Today I'm going to be reading to you from my book, You and Your Gender Identity, A Guide to Discovery. And I'm going to be reading to you from some of the introduction contents. For those of you who are watching this in the future, we're going through quite a time right now. And who knows what's going to happen in the future, those of you who are watching this in the future. But right now we are still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And last week, um, George Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was murdered by a white cop. And there are, I guess I would say, far overdue reactions, protests, and the such that are happening. And there's a lot going on right now. And I hesitated, should I continue my plan to read my book to you? And from what I can gather from my clients as well, even though everything that's happening is very much heavy in our hearts and on our minds, and especially for those of you who are African American and having an incredible a level of intensity on a regular basis that I myself, for one, will never understand. And especially right now, what is the right thing to do? And so I decided that also from talking with some of my clients, people are still needing to answer questions about their gender identity. And so this is here for those of you who want to tune in. And if it's something you want to look at later, you'll look at it later. But I just wanted to kind of put a little pin in it to let you know this is what's happening right now at the moment that I'm making this video. And when some of you will be making comments on this video, it'll be interesting to look into the future and see who is going to watch this video a year from now or 3 years from now, what's going to be happening. So just so you know, that's what's happening in history right now. I have to wear my glasses while I read to you, and I know they create a little bit of a glare, but I don't have the ability to make this high production value, so hopefully everyone's okay with that. I want to start off by reading to you the little quotes that I put at the beginning of a book because, people do that when they're authors. I have a quote from Carl Jung that says, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And then Joseph Campbell, quote from him, "It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." And the reason I put those in there is because so much of this book is inspired by the work of Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell. This book, as I will explain, has a lot to do with the hero's journey. And I patterned the writing of it around that. I have one more quote from a movie called I Heart Huckabees. And if you have seen this movie and you like it, please let me know in the comments because it's kind of rare for me to find somebody who treasures this movie as much as I do. But the character Brad Stand said, "How am I not myself?" That just gave me chills. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean, but if you haven't, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. So, just to let you know, there is an introduction, first of all, by Zinnia Jones called Toward a Transformation of the Self. And there's also a foreword by Sam Dillon Finch. And there is also an introduction by Xander Keeg. And I'm not going to be reading those. I'm actually not going to read my own introduction as well. So this will be because I want to kind of jump into the heart of the book as quickly as possible. Something I will mention is that I am, and I'm not sure for how long I'll be doing it, but check out in the notes for this video that I'm offering the PDF version of this book for $1.99. And I'm going to put the instructions in the notes of this video as to how you can order it. And that way, if it is something that you would want to follow along with, or if there's something I say I'm not going to read, and I think it'd be better for you to read on your own, you can take advantage of that offer. So check it out in the notes. So here's what I'm going to start with, the ins and outs of this guidebook. So this is kind of long, so I might split it up into 2 videos. We'll see. Let's see how this goes. But let's start off. But actually, I'm going to drink some coffee. Now I'm ready. Who is this guidebook for? I created this guidebook for anyone who has questions, curiosities, doubts, confusion, struggles, or concerns about their gender and their gender identity and how this contributes to who they are as a whole. Here's where all of this began. You were assigned a sex at birth, male, female, or intersex, based on the appearance of your genitals, which also became the gender you were assigned at birth. At some point in your life, you began to realize you were not entirely comfortable with this assigned sex and gender. There are many reasons why this could be the case, which you will explore throughout this guide. Having questions about your gender identity can confuse and complicate your understanding of who you are as a whole. When gender identity is a missing puzzle piece, every area of your life is strongly impacted. These questions can create stress, painful confusion, uncertainty of your place in the world, interpersonal difficulty, not having a solid sense of self, and many other issues. Thus, taking time to explore these feelings is crucial. If you have found yourself intrigued by the title of this book and are wondering if it might hold answers to the questions you have about yourself, I suggest you keep reading. So the next section is called, Can I Put This Off? Will it maybe just go away? These questions frequently arise for those who are wrestling with their gender identity. It's also common for someone to test this theory out, waiting to see if the confusion surrounding their gender does indeed subside or disappear over time. However, one's instinctual need to be true to oneself will almost always make itself known one way or another. Choosing to give in to this drive to become your authentic self can be nerve-wracking and full of risks. Nonetheless, the suffering that can result from not doing it can feel worse than any of the possible consequences that would result from exploring your gender identity. The rewards of increased self-awareness are often difficult to describe until one has actually achieved this state of being. I asked my Conversations with a Gender Therapist Facebook community what they learned about themselves once they had a better understanding of their gender identity. So then I list some quotes. Not knowing who you are is terrible, empty, and cold. You're lost. Knowing now who I am has helped me feel like I'm finally alive, that I exist. Realizing this allowed me to better understand myself, express myself, and most importantly, accept myself. I understand now that what I was asking was not, am I transgender, but is it okay to be me? And it is. Oh, I like that. It's been a while since I read my own book. It helped to break down the walls of isolation. As I reconciled my feelings toward myself of fear, self-loathing, etc., they melted away and comfort took its place. Now that I have the words to describe who I am, a world of information is unlocked. Now I have a better, more truthful sense of identity as well as clarity. The answer helped me find balance in my life. It was like hearing a voice that said, what you feel exists and you are not alone. And then I go to say, is this type of self-awareness something you would like to experience as well? Then keep reading. Next, clearing up a damaging myth. I have heard a disturbingly high number of individuals say they have been taught there is a certain way they must experience their gender identity in order to be seen as valid. This belief can be so damaging that it convinces people they shouldn't even bother attempting to explore this any further. Here is what is actually true about your gender identity exploration. 1. This is your discovery process and no one else's. 2. Only you get to decide how to describe your identity. 3. You are allowed to take as long as you need to explore your gender identity. 4. Everyone's experience is different and is to be respected. 5. You will figure some things out now and others later. Reread this list as often as you need as a reminder to not let anyone else's opinion about what the right or wrong way is to go about this journey. Next, how do I use this guidebook? This guidebook was designed to help you achieve greater clarity regarding your gender identity by undertaking a journey of self-exploration. The stages of this journey are separated into 3 sections. So just so you know, this is what's inspired by Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. Stage 1, preparation. Preparation is your setup for success. The work you do in this stage will prepare you for the following stages, much like a martial artist must undergo intensive training before engaging in their first fight. You'll solidify your motivation for embarking upon this journey, reveal fears that are holding you back, and learn how to build support for yourself during what can be a both challenging and rewarding time. Stage 2, reflection. This stage will take you into the past to examine hints and clues that may have been present during your formative years. This will help you make sense of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors you may not have understood before. This section will also help you become more aware of the shame and guilt you may be carrying as a result of what you experienced during this time of your life. Stage 3, exploration. This stage is full of exercises that will help you actively explore your gender identity. The process of discovering one's gender identity is often complicated and overwhelming, and so we'll be breaking it down into easier to digest pieces. You'll examine individual layers that make up one's gender identity, and then have the chance to put these together to form the big picture of who you are. Working through this guide. The guide was created with the assumption that you will be working through it in the order in which it was written. However, if you reach an exercise that you feel you are either not ready for or have already explored, then you should skip it and move on to the next one. It's also okay to leave blanks when you aren't sure what to write, coming back to them once you discover your answers. By all means, take the time as you work through this guide. You can start and stop as often as you need to, whether it's for weeks, months, or even years. Although this guidebook has room in which you can write your answers, you can instead choose to use a separate notebook, sketchpad, or Word document for this purpose. Your responses in this guidebook will create a journal of sorts, providing you with a record you can return to for perspective on just how far you have come. Think of You and Your Gender Identity, A Guide to Discovery, as a compass, map, or navigation system that will act as a guide for however long you need it. Challenges in creating a gender identity guidebook. The topic of gender identity is very complex. Conversations around it are constantly evolving, so writing a book about discovering your gender identity presents its unique challenges. Here are the main ones I encountered. Language and lexicon. Language and lexicon have to do with which words I choose to use throughout the book to describe gender, gender expression, gender identity, etc. I monitor on a daily basis which terms those who are sensitive and inclusive about this subject are most commonly using. Nonetheless, it's possible I will accidentally offend or leave out someone by certain word choices. You are more than welcome to let me know at darahoffmanfox.com/contact if you come across such verbiage so I can address that in future editions. You can put it in the comments too of this video. Additionally, through the duration of the book, I use pronouns they, them instead of he, his, or she, hers. This is done to avoid the cumbersome task of having to write he, she, they whenever I am referring to a person, and not as a dismissive gesture to those who use female or male pronouns. International readers. I receive a large number of messages from individuals all over the world. Although every attempt has been made for the material in this book to be applied as universally as possible, there will more than likely be instances where something is discussed that persons outside of North America will be unable to identify, relate to, or may even be put at risk by. I welcome your feedback again in the comments below as to how I can improve future editions with regard to this concern. Age generational differences. I have received messages from individuals ranging from ages 12 to 72. This brings about the unique challenge of how to create a book that will be relevant to all ages. There is an undeniable difference in how someone who is 72 has experienced their gender identity over the duration of their lifetime compared with someone who is 30. There's also a difference between the experience of those who are 30 compared with those who are currently in their teens. In just a few short years, the power of the internet, combined with dynamic cultural shifts occurring around the world, have dramatically changed the face of gender identity exploration. I have endeavored to present the material in this book as inclusively as possible across generations. A note to those of you who are in your teens. Many of you, especially if you are in your younger teens, are unable to access needed resources without the involvement of a parent or guardian. You may have concerns that you won't be understood or supported by them, which is a reasonable fear. For further assistance, I recommend, and then I list 2 books, which I will put in the notes. I'm also going to put a couple of other resources for younger folks to be able to access for help with this. You can also check out the further resources at the end of certain chapters for ideas as to how you can approach your parents and get support from others. Remember, you don't have to go through this alone. The importance of self-care. This guide will be helpful to you in many ways. As you progress through it, be aware that many unexpected emotions, memories, and realizations are likely to surface. As I was faced with the question, how do I make sure my readers are going to be okay on this journey, I was inspired to create this self-care checklist. And I mentioned what page it is on, but if you don't have a copy of the book, I will be reading the self-care checklist next in the next video. There you will find ideas as to how you can practice self-care as you work through this guidebook, as well as having some place to list your own self-care techniques. I highly recommend you have a mental health practitioner you can turn to as you work through this guidebook. If you are unable to find a trans-friendly practitioner in your area or cannot afford one, seek out knowledgeable and supportive persons you can turn to for support, advice, and friendship. We will cover how you can do this later in this guide. What is your gender identity, Dara? My audience, okay, when did I write this? 2000, this might have been 3 years ago. So I might have an update for you. My audience often asks me about my own gender identity, curious to know more about who it is they are turning to for guidance and advice. I have actually discovered a lot of my answers through writing this book. By the time I reached the end of this writing journey, I concluded I connect most with the term non-binary to describe my gender identity, androgynous to describe my gender expression, and queer to encompass my gender identity, gender expression, and my sexual orientation. I haven't used the word androgynous to describe myself in a really long time. Not that I'm against it, but that's interesting to read and reflect on. Although I'm accustomed to she, her pronouns, I am experimenting with the use of third gender pronouns. Okay, so I don't use she, her anymore, FYI. I find that I most prefer the use of my name in place of a pronoun. That is true, and also I would not use the word prefer anymore. I would instead say I use they, them pronouns or the use of my name. See, things can change over time. I've also begun using the suffix mix, mx, as an expression of my desire to not be gendered as female. This is a gender-neutral alternative to Miss, Mrs., Ms., Mr., etc. So mix Dara Hoffman-Fox. I haven't done that for a while either, but it's fun to throw that in there now and then as a way to remind people and educate people. Being the first student of this guidebook proved to be an unexpected and illuminating experience that I hope its readers are able to experience as well. Final thoughts before we begin. As the subtitle of this book states, this is a guide to discovery. The hope is by the time you reach the end of it, you will be closer to understanding your gender identity as well as yourself as a whole, but it will be far from the final finish line. Growing in self-awareness will point you in the right direction as to what you might want to do next, which will lead you to the next step and the next. However, the journey of discovering your authentic self is one you will be on your entire life. Self-discovery isn't easy. Will others receive what you discover about yourself with compassion, respect, and understanding? Will your relationships with your loved ones change? We live in a time of increasing awareness of what it means to be transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse, but there's a long way to go. With these realities in mind, I've made sure to include tools throughout this guidebook that you can use to help navigate the waters if they grow choppy. I have a few other resources that I list at the end of the chapter, and I will put those in the notes for this video as well. Well, you know what? That felt good to read the whole thing, and I know it's going to mean that this video was long. But thanks for hanging in there, for those of you who did hang in there with this. I look forward to picking up again with the next part of the book, which is your self-care checklist. And then we will begin part 1, preparation, or stage 1, I should say, preparation. Until then, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, please take care and take care of each other.